Norma, I saw you on there, and I got Polly, so I got my girls there. I just love it. I love that these meetings get to incorporate this opportunity. And then I see all my Colorado boys. Oh my gosh, I missed the man-to-man conference. That is an event at our house that I look forward to every year. I look more forward to that than the grandkids coming over or Christmas. I mean, that is so much fun. And we'll be doing it hopefully. Obviously, May went by, but next year we'll do it again. I also like to say that God has made me the vessel. I am not the power. I am merely the vessel to help you get connected to the power. I want to be very clear that if I am anything, I can be the voice of reason, but it doesn't mean you're going to take it. But I can be the voice of reason that God will give you that moment to listen to it and consider it. And then what you do with it is up to you. So I like to be real clear that I'm the vessel. I'm not the power. I don't know what girl you should date, what car you should drive, what job you should get. That's not a sponsor's job, if you ask me. Some people take it as their job. I don't want that responsibility. I've been sober since October the 28th of 1984, and I am blown away when I say that date. You know, I'm 36 years sober. I'm 63 years old. I came in at 26 years old. I had a 5-year-old daughter. I drug her through places she had no business being. I was raised on values. I knew better, but I just couldn't stop. I really thought my problem was outside issues back in the 80s. Come to find out it was alcoholism. And I didn't do anything without drinking. Drinking was a part of my entire life. I know pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization. You have a 5-year-old and be a single mom pissed off and dragging that little girl. You just got guilt and shame all the time. It was a vicious cycle, and I knew better. And I like to qualify myself very simply by saying when I start, I can't stop, and I can't stop starting. I don't spend much time in my drinking story. I don't think that this is the best opportunity for it. If I'm sitting with the new girl, knee to knee, you can bet your butt we'll be talking about my drinking. But we're all on here learning how to grow spiritually. So that's what I like to talk about. I just don't spend much time at all in the drinking problem. And like I said, I've done a lot of 10 and 11 talks. The directions are very clear in the book. I think everyone on this Zoom meeting knows clearly what the directions are. The problem is we're not doing it. I mean, come on, let's be real honest. In the last 2 weeks, how many written evening reviews did you do? Answer the question. You don't have to come clean to me. And then how many on awakenings did you do? I'm not talking read spiritual literature, closed your eyes for 5 minutes. I'm talking follow the directions, ask to be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, self-seeking motives. If you're not doing an evening review, you are not bringing what you need into on awakening. So don't be patting yourself on the back that you're at least doing that. I'm not here to knock you, but let's make no bones about it. Without an evening review, your on awakening doesn't have the value it needs, right? And so if we all understand the clear-cut directions in 10, 11, we're assuming most folks understand 1 through 9. And this 11th step, by the time we get there, talks about this attitude, the proper attitude you must have. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit later on about this attitude. And I always thought it was like, well, I got a good attitude. Let's rock and roll. Come to find out, it's way deeper than that. The book implies trouble. All over our book is trouble. You can call them promises, but they are some dark trouble. Talks about death. Long before, we will wish we were dead long before we are physically dead. Lots of warnings. There's 3 places in the book I like to refer to. Page 25, where it says, blot out our intolerable situation the best we can. There is somebody on this Zoom meeting that knows exactly what I'm talking about. I want to blot out this intolerable situation the best I can, or accept spiritual help. Page 53, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we can't postpone or evade. Either God's everything or he's nothing. Now, this is crushed by a self-imposed crisis. This is not, damn it, I forgot the orange juice at the store today. This is, I'm going to kill my neighbor. I can't stand him. He comes outside one more time and I'm talking, that's the kind of stuff that wraps us up tight. But when we see him, we're like, hey, Bob, right? Little do you know what's going on inside. Most of us on this Zoom meeting have been sober long enough that we're not saying the F word in the line at Starbucks. We're real clear. Oh, we're keeping it all here. And let me tell you, that's what spiritual growth is about, paying attention to the chatter up here. And then the third one is the deliberate manufacture of misery. God didn't do it, but when trouble comes, cheerfully capitalize on it so he can show his omnipotence. right? So it's either the terrible situation or accept spiritual help. And let me tell you, it says lack of power was our dilemma. Why is this a dilemma? Because they both suck. You're telling me I got a big problem and I'm supposed to go to God with this big problem. Yeah, not only are you supposed to go to God, you're supposed to have been connected well enough that he's carrying you through these challenging times. And let me tell you, it says on page 14, for if an alcoholic fails to enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he cannot handle certain trials and low spots. Let me tell you, what could be a trial and a low spot for somebody, a root canal, can be really devastating to somebody. Why? Because they can't afford it. And they got to get rid of it. They got to fix their tooth, right? It could be the loss of a job. It could be a child's illness. I don't know what it is. But let me tell you, when that storm comes, the book says, is your foundation solid so far? You better be prepared because a tsunami is coming. And let me tell you, how many times in your sobriety have you been hit with a tsunami? That bondage of self, that laying in bed with the four horsemen. Yeah, I'm not picking up a drink, but I'd rather be dead. And that's what we're talking about, guys. Now, the 10th step, we're trying to get you before you go down that rabbit hole. But I really think those rabbit holes are a part of the necessity of growing spiritually. See, a spiritual awakening is painful. It's the enlightenment that is so fantastic, right? We all want to ride on the crest. Can't ride on a crest of a wave for very long. And so the spiritual awakening is painful, but we've got to have that pain. It's the touchstone of growth. It says on page 45, lack of power. That was our dilemma. So we had to find a power by which we could live. Which we could live. It's asking you a question. Mark used to say, turn statements into questions. And it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how are we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book's about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which can solve your problem. So it's not a book about how to get sober. I know. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was all about getting sober. I thought once I was sober, I got it from here, God. Hey, self-reliance did not fail me. I can handle this problem. You see, so it's exactly what the book is about. Its main object is to enable me to find a power greater than myself, which will solve my problem. Sobriety just happens to be one of the many gifts that we get. That means we've written a book which we believe to be spiritual. Okay, there you go. And moral. What? Moral? Oh, for God's sakes, you're going to throw that in there. That's why when I'm working with sponsees, I'm going to sit down and talk about your moral compass on your sex, on your money, on relationships with people. We're going to talk about your values. Book says you can't fool yourself about values. Get in a marriage and have both of you have two different values on how you raise kids. You got trouble. That's just the nature of it. Values are everywhere. We agnostics, that's all it's ever talking about is our prejudice, right? Our prejudgment on everything. Money, sex, family, work, weather, states, politics, you name it. We are all over the map. And then it says, and it means, of course, that we're going to talk about God. And once again, I don't mince any bones about this. I don't call it the higher power. I'm not downplaying the God thing. That's all we got, right? Identification and power. You got a problem with the power? No worries. More than half our fellowship did. Just ride the wave and see what happens. But if I come up against a strong atheist, I got no time for you. You know, go to another program. Go do something else. You see, it'd be like me going to Jiffy Lube. And when I pull in, asking them to clean my teeth. The guy looks around and goes, lady, we change all. I don't care. I want you to clean my teeth. You come into AA, all we got is identification and power. If you got a problem with the power, I understand. Let's do the steps. By the time you're at the end of them, if you still got a problem with it, go start another program. And don't call it Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you very much. This is a crowd I can say that freely to. Dr. Bob said, the directions in our book are clear cut, but everybody has a different experience. And I think in AA, one of the things that we have to be careful of, a lot of cautions I'm going to give you guys, that and it's mainly just an awareness. You may already be aware of it, but it's what we call oral AA. Chris Schroeder was the first one that ever had that phrase. Oral AA, people begin to think, because we share our experience, strength, and hope, people think that you got to have the same experience that I have, or you can't help me. You have to have been divorced. You have to have been fired. You have to have had a car accident. No, you don't. You don't have to have had any of those things. I mean, every once in a while, a loss of a child, I'll help you talk to somebody else who lost a child. That's a pretty painful one right there. And I want you to talk to somebody else. But other than that, we all can help based on the book. It says it can solve all our problems. I think it's easier to get an alcoholic to stop drinking than it is to get one of us to quit playing God, right? Alcohol was the solution, not the problem. And let me tell you, if you pick up a drink with sobriety, 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, 20 years, it's not going to look like the problem. It's going to look like the solution. That's how cunning, baffling, and powerful alcoholism is. So what are we going to talk about? And remember, alcohol was the only thing that treated the pain of living a life based on self-will. That's why alcohol is the solution. You take away my solution and I am a raw wire walking around. So we're going to talk about my relationship with my creator. That's what the book is getting me to, right? We're going to use Bill's white light experience in the hospital. And I think this is so interesting because even though he had the white light experience, I had more of the educational variety, as the book calls it, but it still has the same experience, right? May not be all crammed into one moment, but over a period of time, it's the same thing. It says, thus I was convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want him enough. No atheist in a foxhole. Consider what that's saying. If you want him enough, you will see God, drunk or sober. He loves us both ways. At long last, I saw, I felt, I believed. Scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes. A new world came into view. The real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. Now, I love this. For a brief moment, I had needed and wanted God. If that's not saying a mouth, for a brief moment. See, that's what we're talking about. You don't go, wow, I found him. I got him. We're all good. You have to do these disciplines in order to get unblocked so that you can have this conversation, this constant conversation. As it says in the 11th step, right? We pause when agitated or doubtful. Pause, ask, remind, and say. Ask for the right thought or action, reminding ourselves we're no longer running the show. Saying many times each day, your will, not mine, be done. Well, you do that when you've done the discipline, that comes naturally. If you're doing 2 evening reviews a week and maybe 3 morning prayer and meditation, that's sufficient to keep you sober and to work a fairly okay lifestyle. But it won't get you this type creation that we're talking about, this relationship with the creator. You have to work at it. Just like you have to work at a relationship in your marriage. You have to work at a relationship with your children, with your employees, with your employer, with your sponsees. We have to work at these things. We alcoholics are just lazy. That's just what we are, call it what it is. And there had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came. Black and white, guys. It's all he's asking is make some effort to have this relationship. Don't just be crying for me when you need me. You need to have this relationship all the time. But soon the sense of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamor. This white light experience, worldly clamor, most of them within myself. That's that bondage of self we're talking about. That chatter in your head is what worldly clamor looks like. And the word clamor in the 1936 dictionary is a violent expression of discontent. Anybody relate to that? I so get it. Chris Schroeder also said something so cool. He says, we wake up restless, irritable, and discontented. We either go up to happy, joyous, and free or down to the 4 horsemen. But folks, if you don't think we wake up restless, irritable, and discontent, start checking your temperature. Don't just say you think you do. The ego wants you to believe, no, you don't listen to that Katie Parker in Texas. Don't you listen to her. You wake up just fine. You just keep doing what you're doing. That's how it likes to sell us on it. Just check. I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but I could be. And so it had been ever since, how blind I had been. This step 11 that we're going to talk about, because 10 and 11 are like a hand in glove. It suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Now, here's something interesting. I was talking to a sponsee of mine over in Australia. She's got 32 years. And she said, oh, Katie, I was really struggling at this dinner party I was at. And I sat there and just kept asking God, God, please, take this from me. Help me. Don't do it. Constantly in prayer, almost begging. And I said, did you ever affirm it? And she goes, give me more to talk about on that. I said, did you ever ask God to help you and then affirm what he's going to give you out of this deal? And she said, no. And the next morning I found something in my Emmett Fox, who I absolutely love, where he was talking about it. I sent her a picture of it. I go, what are the odds that I would find that exact page and read it? Because, see, you have to understand the law of substitution and the law of subconscious activity. The laws are in effect if you like them or not. They're in all religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, Native American, doesn't matter where you want to go, right? We throw the gates so wide open. I lean towards Western, but that's just my cup of tea. And so these laws, this law of substitution, you must replace a negative thought with a positive. You must. We're not screwing around here. So if all you're doing is hanging out in the prayer world, you're missing a huge piece of it. You must affirm, right? You got a kid that's going off the rails. God, I am scared to death about my son. Please guide him and help him. And then I'm going to affirm that he's got an amazing life. He wakes up and he's just full of joy. He's very helpful to others. He's got a great job. He really enjoys living. 3 to 10 second redirect. That's what that 10 steps asking us. When we ask God it wants to remove it, it's asking us to redirect. If you just go through that and go, God, please remove this fear, that is not a deep personal relationship. You have to get in conversation. And I totally forgot to bring in, hey, Charlie, would you go get my notebook out of my room? I want to read what God told me a couple of days ago. It's a pretty cool thing. And then Bill goes on to say, better men than we are using it constantly. Imagine being in prayer constantly. Well, you will if you do these disciplines, and you do these disciplines every day. That's it. Don't go into tomorrow. All you do is today. So you did on awakening, and then you carry throughout the day watching for resentment, dishonesty, selfishness, and fear, and do what it tells you to do. And then at the end of the night, you check your work. How'd I do? Take 15 minutes. More depth. Put pen to paper with it. Oh, if you're using that silly app, apps. If you're using that silly app, use it for a while, then put the magic to the pen and paper. Magic happens with a pen in your hand, not a type. Typing, you type as fast as you think. We want to slow it down. And then really write a thorough evening review. And then on awakening, bring those corrective measures into that. Asking God to divorce you from the self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. What do they look like there, right? And so, hey, Charlie, you know what? It's in that plastic thing. Did you find? No. It's right to the right side in the plastic. It's a spiral notebook. First time I ever moved it to a different spot. It says it works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. Well, like I said, I thought that attitude was, I got a good attitude. Well, here's the attitude. It's over on page 55, I believe, 55 or 52. I think it's 55. It says we can only clear the ground a bit, right? Because we're just talking the moment. We're not talking next week. We're not talking when I'm 3 years sober, when I'm 30 years sober. We're just talking the moment. Right now, the moment you're having is listening to me share my experience of my relationship with the Creator. Don't go in judging yourself. Don't go in trying to figure out how you can fit this in. Stay in the moment. It's one of the hardest things in the world to do. Let's see if we got it. Oh, perfect, honey. Thank you so much. Yeah, this was really cool. I'll read it in a minute. I appreciate that. So don't let me forget to do that. So we can only clear the ground a bit if our testimony helps sweep away prejudice. Just go through the day tomorrow and pay attention to how much you judge everything. I mean, most people go, I'm not that judgmental. I'm like, I think you're asleep. Watch your thinking. You are going to be shocked because that's what the 10th step is getting us out of damage control, not just watching our actions. We are watching our thinking. Like Eckhart Tolle says, the me and the I. Take away those two things, really separate yourself. You're going to be surprised. If enable you to think honestly. So it's saying that this attitude is going to enable you to think honestly. You know, if we can't differentiate the true from the false, it is very difficult for me to be honest. It really is. I can be honest with you. I don't lie, bull. You just lied saying you don't lie. We all lie to some degree. We don't tell the full story. But more than anything, I believe the delusion in my head. In a marriage, my gosh, your husband walks in and you look at him and you think, oh, I know what he's doing today. Yeah, I can tell by that attitude. And I'm set. I'm not checking it out. I just immediately made a decision that I knew. Same with the kids, same with the neighbors, same with sponsees. Oh, here she calls again. I know what she's getting ready to say. I have a hell of a time moving her off the mark. Now, some of that is normal, but if you watch it, you will be amazed at how God will work with you there. It says, encourage you to search diligently within yourself. So it requires courage to do this. This is not for the weak at heart. Let me tell you, to really do self-examination, as the book says, the 12 and 12 says, there's a direct link among self-examination and meditation and prayer, right? Taken separately, they can bring much relief and benefit. But when they are interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. So if you're doing morning time and you're really doing heavy meditation, great. But without the inventory, bringing it in, yeah, you're missing a big piece of the work, right? We got to keep our finger on the pulse of us. And then it says, if you wish, you can join us on this broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. Once again, getting us out of this thought react into God conscious. See, most of us live in a thought react. When I say something, you immediately think, am I doing that? Am I doing this? You go right to thought react. Instead, try to take it down a notch and just listen to the process. Listen to where we go. So it'd be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions, right? Then it goes back, it says back in We Agnostics is such a profound chapter. It says, yet we have been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world, people who have rose above their problems. How many times in AA have you seen your sponsees do better than you? What the heck? How come they get the job? How come I don't? How come they get the relationship? How come I don't, right? This is the exact same thing it's trying to tell us. They said God made these things possible and we only smiled. Oh, yeah, sure. And we had seen spiritual release, but like to tell ourselves it wasn't true. Yeah, it's going to work for them, but it's not going to work for me. That's how that shows up. We're not saying you don't have a relationship with God. We're just saying how you throw loopholes in your thinking. When is this ever going to let up for me? It's the same old stuff. And it says, actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down inside every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. Really? Maybe obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things. In this day and age, money, work, gambling, food, sex, porn, kids. My God, what can an alcoholic shove inside of us? Charlie likes to say most of us qualify for about 10 other 12-step programs. But let me warn you on that. When you start going to other fellowships, you're managing your problem. The book, if you're alcoholic, you got one. That's it. One 12-step program. You don't have to manage your other programs with Gamblers Anonymous, Sex Anonymous, Food Anonymous, CODA, whatever that is. Oh my God, I try to talk to those people. They make me crazy. I've already done the codependency recovery therapy for 10 years. I hear what you're saying, but our book does not use the terminology codependent. It says that we are the actor running the whole show. If everyone would do as I wish, the show would be great. Show me the dependence there. Okay, so I digress. But in some form or another, it's there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and a miraculous demonstration of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup. Ask yourself that question. Are you really there? And if you are, why are we not working harder on getting this deep personal relationship? Right? We talk about this stuff. Oh, yeah, God. Oh, God's great. God's wonderful. And then how many written evening reviews did you do? This past week? It's like, I'm just saying, take 15 minutes to do a written evening review. If you don't do it in the evening, at least do it in the morning, but do it. Don't not do it and expect to have the results of someone that did it. It says our understanding of God changes as we grow spiritually. Think about that. So when you were 20, as opposed to when you're 40, You have a very different experience in life, right? So you got 20 years of an experience. In your 20s, you're bulletproof. In your 30s, you're trying to find yourself. In your 40s, you're honing in on what you found in your 30s. In your 50s, you're sitting back checking it out. And in your 60s, you're just coasting. You're starting to coast on everything, right? What I got in my 60s as opposed to my 40s, I was still, coasting. Yeah, bring it. You got a problem with this, huh? Now I'm like, hey, I got no problem. Go ahead, take it. I don't care. I'm tired. I want to enjoy life. You see, so same thing happens in your spiritual growth. What used to work at 3 years doesn't work at 5 years. What used to work at 5 years dang sure doesn't work at 8 years. So you have to grow. What makes you grow? Pain. It's the nature of it. We ask that you not beat yourself up when you find a character defect that keeps showing up. Don't go off into morbid reflection about it. Thank God from the bottom of your heart that you've seen it. Blot out your intolerable situation or accept spiritual help. Self-imposed crisis, go to God. Deliberate manufacture of misery. Book is trying to tell us, stop beating yourself up. Would you ever do that to your children? If they screwed up, they failed a test again, you wouldn't look at them and go, well, you idiot. What were you thinking? You wouldn't say that. No, you might say that in your quietness of your mind. But you wouldn't say it to the kid. You would say, you know what, honey, we're going to figure out another way to go about this. You would do anything to help him. That's what we're talking about, this relationship with God, is father-child. I have a very childlike relationship with God. I like I said, I'm Christian. I tried to do the Bible. I did 4 years of Bible study fellowship. I tried to do church. I tried to get knowledge. I didn't ever try to get a relationship experience. And Emmett Fox brought me closer to God. I can go to church or not go to church. I don't have to do that. But what I have today, I didn't even know was possible. All I did is got on the path, did the journey, and I got a most experience that I've never even had anything like this before. I can't wait for the hereafter. I mean, I can enjoy the moment. I can be in the moment 90% of the time in my life. It's incredible. It's an intimate personal relationship with the God of my understanding, right? God consciousness as opposed to Katie consciousness, right? Thought, react. So when we get off of this meeting, you're going to have a lot of my thoughts going through your head. A lot of things I thought I said that made you think deeper. So you're going to have a lot of Katie consciousness. Let's move that to God consciousness. Let's find a spiritual teacher. You can have a handful of them. I like Emmett Fox, Miguel Ruiz, Anthony DeMello from time to time. Thomas Merton never touched me. Eckhart Tolle never touched me. The Untethered Soul was pretty cool. But I love Sarah Young in Jesus Calling. Love that. That's that two-way prayer, or what I like to call my love letters to God. I write these love letters to God, and they blow me away. And I start every morning with them. Every morning I write down to God. I call him Father God, and he calls me my child. And I just write out this whole thing. I'm concerned about my son, Charlie's health. I write more detail about that. I may have a sponsee that's got some challenges. I'm kind of looking for our world to get back in order. I've got challenges there. My different things. It's about a paragraph. And then I give it a little bit of time. And after I've done through some of my morning stuff, usually read a paragraph out of Emmett Fox's Sermon on the Mount. Mark used to say, read a paragraph and then go back through and ask yourself what each line means to you. That's how you study. If you read 3 pages of spiritual literature, I'm sorry, you missed it. That's not what spiritual literature is designed for. It's designed to read a paragraph, go back through and ask yourself, what does that mean to you? Bring it down to personal. And then I write, what God tells me. And this is my notebook I use, and I like to color code. But I'm retired. I have a really fabulous life. It's unbelievable. And I got a dog, and I just have a great life. And, but I can make it terrible. Don't get me wrong. I can make it really terrible. And, I have this beautiful sports car, and it hauls ass. It's a V8 engine. That's all I know. I don't know the big block numbers, but it hauls ass. It likes to go comfortably at about 92. And I like to drive fast. I always have driven fast. And so, but I don't drive dangerously. Now, let me explain that. I don't shoot a gap that's dangerous. Well, I've been traveling a lot lately, and I shot a gap a few weeks ago that was damn dangerous. It damn sure was. And after I shot that gap, I went, wow, I am not in a hurry. What the hell? And I mean, I was in instant conversation with God, instantly. It was like, wow, that was just stupid. And I did not need to do that. And so I'd love to tell you, I took great action and I drove home slower. Wouldn't that all be great if I could get self to fix self? That was my awareness, right? You've got to have the awareness and the knowledge. But trust me, the work is between me and God on that. And so I dismissed it because I can do that. I can dismiss it. So I am writing my love letter to God. And this is what he says to me a couple of mornings ago. And there was nothing about my driving. My child, as you know, we are communicating all the time. I have laid out a beautiful path for you to follow. Never forget to watch and have for all my hidden treasures along the way. Oh, yes, you're driving. Yeah. This is what he said. The pen is just writing. Your driving is becoming a challenge of unhappiness to me. It puts you in danger, and you know that. You must release your frustration. You are not in a hurry. You never are in a hurry. So there you have it. And it was like, oh boy, wow. Didn't see that coming. I've never had that happen in my two-way prayer. And so I can tell you, every time I get behind the wheel of my car, I respect everything he said there. And I have been watching my driving. Twice, I've driven too fast. I've gotten on someone's ass, don't need to. I'm not 6 inches from them. I'm 2 car lengths, but we're going 70. That's ridiculous. So I'm being aware and really asking God to help me. If I think I'm going to wake up and slow down, oh, dream on. Really? And you call yourself alcoholic? We don't give up easy, right? That grip is held on tight. But I just couldn't believe that. These love letters are so spectacular to me. And I do them all the time. I write them throughout the day. I'll flip over a napkin and just write, Father God, oh man, I am really angry, or I'm deeply frustrated. So-and-so did this, this, and this. And I clearly see my self-esteem's affected. How is it affected? My I am statements. I'll scribble out an inventory, and then God will speak right to me. Then I decide if I need to, call Marty on this one. Is it really dug in? I'm not going to wait 3 days to call Marty. I'm going to call it and leave it on her machine. Wow, Marty, I had a sponsee just really pissed me off a little while ago. Said something that was just bullshit. You know what I mean? Come on. I mean, you don't sponsor enough people if you don't have that problem from time to time. So then it says, sometimes we have to search fearlessly. But he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it is only there that he may be found. Really? I'm looking out here for God. He is deep down. That still quiet voice is right in here. And I hear it all the time. Call it good consciousness. I don't care what you call it, but listen for it. It's very quiet. It's not a booming voice. It's a very quiet voice. It's a very kind voice. It's a very loving voice. It's a lot of reasoning, a lot of logic. Right. And here's the other thing. I like to say, so the answer to all my problems is in my big book. It sat on the shelf. So my book was 8 feet from me at most times, and God's deep down inside of me. And I am out here trying to manage everything, right? I am managing everything. I'm getting more counseling and I'm getting more of this. And we got to figure out this. And we got to sit down and have a family meeting. And all these things are great, but I'm over there in so much self-reliance. Why? Because self-reliance worked for me. Right? It says that we have to be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Turn that statement into a question. Do your actions prove that to not be true? No way. Self-reliance worked for me. Charlie likes to say it didn't work for him. It works for me. Now, today, I would disagree with him. His self-reliance works pretty damn good. Right? And so you want me to lay down this tool. I don't want to lay down that tool. It works. I'm not going to pick up this hinky spiritual toolkit until I have been rocketed into this fourth dimension, have this vital sixth sense, and I didn't even know what those words meant. But now that I've had them, I am moved to not let my self-reliance do it. 90% of the time, I don't let my self-reliance do it. Wow. And how did that happen? By these daily disciplines. I just did them and it began happening, right? That's what I didn't know that. And then it talks about logic, right? Logic is great stuff. We like it. We still like it. It's not by chance that we were given the power to reason, to examine the evidence of our senses, and to draw conclusions. This is one of man's magnificent attributes. We, agnostically inclined, would not feel satisfied with a proposal which does not lend itself to reasonable approach and interpretation. I mean, doesn't that just sound logical? Well, you ask a sponsee what's going on. They lay out their problem. Well, let me tell you, I'd like to tell them logically what you can do, but you're driven. You're driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. See, when you're driven, logic, who cares? You know, you just broke up with your boyfriend, and the next thing you know, or for you guys, you broke up with your girlfriend, and you're sitting at your house, and you're in so much bondage of self. The next thing you know, you're behind the wheel of the car driving over to her place. Bad idea. I don't care. I'm doing it. And if there's nobody there, I might just barge in. If there's somebody there, I won't barge in. Oh, yeah, sure. Let's see if you got that kind of self-control. You see what I mean? Or you get a wad of money. I'm not going to spend it. My golly, I'm not going to spend it. No, I'm not going to. I mean, I might could spend a little bit on that. You see, we don't even see these things and the way that self-reliance sneaks in there. We ask 10 people for input. We're looking for human aid, right? Well, okay, let me tell you this problem. Same problem. They give me the, interesting. Hey, Mary, let me tell you this problem. Interesting. Now I have flooded my brain with so much information. I am confused. Never really took it to prayer because I don't have that established, right? Now, granted, you can throw a Hail Mary prayer and God will answer it, but you just may not hear it, right? We're blocked and we have so much of that calamity going on. I always say, write inventory, find out the truth, put pen to flipping paper. It's either going to be a resentment inventory, a fear inventory, or a conduct inventory with an emphasis on sex. It's not a sex problem. It's a relationship problem with you and your sister. Write a conduct inventory. You're all over it. Remember, deep down inside is the undeniable voice of God. It's just blocked by that calamity. And that third step, you've got to have an understanding. I'm not going to go into the third step. There's plenty of CDs out there of tons of people doing the third step. But people call it, we call it the second surrender. Some people call it emotional sobriety. It's whatever you want to call it, but you darn sure better understand it. So I always like to get a beat on somebody. You know, I always like to ask them how long they've been sober. What does it mean to be alcoholic? And what does the third step mean? Right? And they almost always take the step off the wall. Turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understood him. Okay, well, you've repeated the step on the wall, but I mean, what does that mean? Well, they don't have a clue because I didn't have a clue at 17 years. And the new guy that is, big book all the way, knows the big book forward and backward. He's 3 years sober and he's out there taking the message. I admire you. But dude, when you fall, you are going to fall so hard. I think you fall harder than the guy that doesn't know the book because you know too much and you don't have the experience. And I've watched that guy fall and he's never not done a 10 step. He does 10 steps faithfully. Well, you know what? Why don't we try something different? Because that ain't working for you. So let's try a love letter to God. Let's try some two-way prayer. Let's find a spiritual teacher that you might be able to find. You know, let's try something different because you've got to figure out when you're in a rut, how to grow out of that rut. You know, sure, I can talk to you. I'm available to talk to any of you guys if you got a real problem. I tell you, Jack, when he brought that inventory to Charlie and I, it was not a small piece of inventory. It was a serious piece of business and deeply personal. And we had just met him. And that's the kind of stuff in AA I don't ever want to miss. I don't ever want to miss that honor that somebody wants to do a piece of inventory with me or vice versa. You know, I have my people I do inventory with and I expect them to tell me the truth. I'm not looking for some panty weight answer. I'm not looking for some philosophical BS. Where's God and all of that? That makes me want to slap the crap out of you. Clearly, he's not there. I'm so pissed off, I'm blocked. Or I'm so scared, I'm blocked. You know, don't be throwing that, hokey pokey stuff at me. Let's get down to the inventory process. I'm willing to swallow and digest large chunks of truth about myself. I want freedom, you know? And so you got to understand that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our problem. I don't think too much of myself or too little of myself. All I think about is myself. How do others see me? And you really want to find out? Go take 3 people that are very personal to you and tell them, I want you to tell me honestly, what do you see in me? What is it? And I want you to be honest. Bring the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm telling you, you will be surprised. This is really an interesting thing. You love and respect these people. Let them tell you. You talk too much when you're in conversations with others. You don't seem to be interested in somebody else's life. Hey, Charlie, I think the neighbor's knocking on the door. And you don't take phone calls that you should. How about that? Bring me 3 pieces of work here, right? And then when it talks about the first requirement in that 3rd step is that you have to be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. We're almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motive is good. There's the caveat, the hickey right there. See, we come into AA and we're cleared of wrong motives, right? We know when we're working an angle. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to not do it. Oh, come on. Trust me, I love those kind of people. I know when I'm working an angle, and I might still do it. Of course I might. I'm no Lily White. I'm going to work an angle. I'm going to figure out how to get to the head of that line, or I'm going to figure out how to get this guy to help me, or whatever the case may be. But it's when it's behind a kind motive. Most people don't see it, and that's where people really, really start waking up in AA, when it's behind that kind motive. And then I'm going to skip through a lot of this 3rd step stuff because you guys know it, and I don't want to just get too, blah, 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 blah. But I tell you, when it's talking about, so our troubles we think are basically of our own making, they arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Ask yourself, just take a moment to go, am I really an extreme example? And most of the time, people say, no. Oh, I may be when I'm pissed off, but no, most of the time I'm not. Yes, you are. I'm here to tell you, you are. You're not doing enough inventory if you don't think you are. The book never says you arrive. You know what I mean? I mean, to me, it's like, I'm not lightening up on you guys. I'm with a group of people on the firing line. I'm here to tell you that I have to be held as much accountable as I hold my sponsees accountable, right? And when we talk about that we are an extreme example, blaming others is as far as most of us got. Tomorrow, I want you to watch for how often you blame in your mind. Well, my coffee cup was sitting there. My wife must have moved. Get out to the car and you're sitting at the stop sign, 4-way stop. Is anybody going to move? Oh my God, what is taking so long? Just watch yourself. Trying to get into this mindset is not easy. And I tell you, be very cautious that you're not working on character defects. You can't be less selfish. You can't fix self with self. Self-knowledge or awareness are very important to see what's driving you, right? What's driving us? Old ideas, values. Where do we find those? In a 3rd column of a 4-column inventory: self-esteem, pride, ambition, security. The self-reliance column of a fear inventory. I don't care if it's a 2-column, 3-column, 4-column. It's going to be in the self-reliance. And then in the conduct inventory, it's all over it. Where did you arouse bitterness, jealousy, suspicion? What old idea is driving you? Is it okay if your wife talks to another man? Is it okay if your kids spend money, your money, without asking you? And these are values. Everybody has them, and they're ever changing, right? You can't fool yourself about value. And so here's the deal. Otherwise, I go into self-reliance. I try to fix it. There's no God. You scare me bad enough. We had to have God's help. This is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. We just don't do, I'm going to quit playing God on this one. That's what we do, is play God. Next, we decided, now here's the decision. The prayer is the reiteration of the decision. If God was going to be our director, he's our principal, we're his agent. God, doesn't that sound great? He's the employer, right? So if he is the main man, the director, I'm just the actor. He is the principal. And the word agent means he empowers me to act on his behalf. Doesn't mean I'm acting for God, but I'm acting on his behalf. I'm trusting that God is using me as the vessel. When we sincerely took such a position, what position? That we're going to quit playing God. You can only do that moment by moment, day by day. Don't think you get that done and you put it aside and you go, by golly, we're done here. And the terms, it says God does not make too hard of terms for those who rely on him. Page 48, right? Being all powerful, he provided what we needed. If we keep close to him and perform his work well, in order to keep close to him, I got to get close to him. In order to get close to him, I got to get unblocked. I got to get unblocked and stay unblocked. You see, it's the hub of everything, right? Blind Dave, who's on here, does such a beautiful, beautiful talk behind all of this. He ties 10, 11, everything into it. And I wouldn't even try to talk of how he does it, but he is great to get some of his CDs on this. Perform his work well. Stay close to him and perform his work well. That means work these steps, stay unblocked, and take care of his drunk kids. Yes, we take care of other people, but we take care of his drunk kids. That's what's so important. And I think we get a little confused around 6 and 7. I think the 4-step has the deep directions on what 10 is all about, right? You do the heavy lifting when you first come in. You know, some people do a yearly house cleaning. I personally have never supported that. I'm like, why in the world would you do a yearly house cleaning? You've been letting that stuff sit up on the shelf. Trust me, that's blocking you. You should be doing current 10 and 11, current 10 and 11. And, you know, if you need to get that out of the way and then start the 10 and 11, fine. But I don't know. That's just my take on it. But that 6 and 7 gets bogged down by people. They misunderstand what it's trying to tell you. We've just spent 75 pages talking about Katie's DNA. How do I show up with Charlie when? Fill in the blank. How do I show up with my children when? Fill in the blank. How do I show up with people in AA? Fill in the blank. When I'm speaking, fill in the blank. I know exactly how I show up from my 3rd column and my 4th column of a resentment inventory, from my self-reliance and a fear inventory, and my conduct inventory. It's everywhere. This is not new information. So if I'm going into that on awakening, I know what my day is going to look like. Rarely does anything catch me off guard. I'm clearly taking all of this stuff into it. So that 10th step is no longer damage control. It's watching for, right? I'm going to get angry and afraid. I don't have the freedom to stay angry and afraid. I mean, if for some reason someone has actually done me wrong, which trust me, guys, that doesn't happen often. I've got to work on forgiveness. Personally, I would prefer to have to ask for forgiveness than have to forgive because I don't do it very well. This 10th step, 10 and 11, the idea of watching for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear is much different than waiting for these things to show up. It tells me the 4 things to do. The 11th step, check my work at the end of the day, corrective measures into on awakening. Think about the 24 hours ahead. Consider my plans. Ask to be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives, right? And then Bill, love it. In Bill's story at the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. There I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him. See, that's trying to tell you spiritual growth is like growing up. You grow. If the Serenity Prayer worked at 3 years, it doesn't touch me at 20 years. Trust me, it never touched me. But some people it does. So that kind of stuff, or just thinking of all the things I'm grateful for, that's a nice thing to do. Don't get me wrong. Dave uses that a lot. But if I am in a real beef with Charlie and you think of gratitude is going to get me out of it, it doesn't work that way. This spiritual maturity is a lot the same as spiritual maturity is a lot the same as growing up. And then it says, to do with me as he would. I place myself undeservedly under his care and direction. I have not had a drink since. I was to test my thinking by the new God conscious within. Common sense would then become uncommon sense. My friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator. That I would have the elements of a way of living which would answer all my problems. Belief in the power of God plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain the new order of things were the essential requirements. I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over all of us. While I laid in that hospital bed, the thought came to me that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what has been so freely given to us. Perhaps I could help some of them. They, in turn, might work with others. Thank you very much for having me.
Wow, thank you so much, Katie. That was awesome. I'm gonna call on a couple guys. If you have something to say, please raise your hand in the virtual thing or chat me directly. Otherwise, we're just gonna call on a couple people. I'd like to hear from Fred.
Thanks, Tim. That was very enlightening, Katie.
Thanks, Fred.
I made a recording because I've been asked for it by people that couldn't make the meeting, and I need to listen to it again. And this is a wonderful path that I'm on, and I found a few things during your talk that I need to change. The written review at night, I've done it twice this week. That's the first 2 times I've written it down. So there's a place I need to work. There's lots of other places too, but I'd like to say I enjoyed the talk. I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but it was helpful. So thanks.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. How about Brock?
Oh, man. I'm Brock. I'm an alcoholic. Katie, thank you so much for sharing. Kind of just like taking my jaw off the floor. It was an awesome talk. I can. I do write down my evening reviews, and it's something I did early on in sobriety, and then I got away from it, and I've sort of picked it up again recently. It just helps me. Yeah, I think it helps me slow it all down. You talked about like the difference of writing it down in the app versus writing it down on paper. And that's my experience is like, if I'm even like reading spiritual literature in the morning, it's so much more impactful when I'm reading that book, I'm reading the piece of paper versus like scrolling on the app. It's easy for me to just check out that way. I don't have too much more to add. I just appreciate, the share. Thanks.
You bet.
Thanks, Brock. How about Ramsey? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Tim. Good to see everybody. Ramsey Alcoholic. Katie, thank you so much for your share. It's definitely going to be a good topic to dive into with some other of my AA friends, just to start a good spiritual conversation, to kind of put the pulse on like how they're doing and how I'm doing. And that's kind of a lot what I took from it is just, that's the big part that I gathered from you tonight is just really touching back into that evening practice and the morning practice. At one point, I did a really good evening practice and a really shitty morning practice, and now I'm doing a really good morning practice and not a really good evening practice. So, it's life. It's good to be back into it. So, thank you again for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, Ramsey. How about Norma?
Hello, everybody. My name's Norma. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Norma.
Katie, how funny that we've seen each other twice in 1 week.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and we definitely are both on the same page in so many ways. And I love how all of us have different personalities, but the same spiritual aim. And I love the 10th step because it comes right after the promises, which says, and these will materialize if we work for them. And it's like, well, what is the work? And then we go right into step 10. And what we have is so valuable because it is a spiritual way of life for people like us who had absolutely no hope. And I love the beautiful way you describe so many things that are strong elements in my life today. The writing, the affirming God's power and love, and so many other things. It was a pleasure to hear what you had to share. Your experiences, so valuable, and I just love you.
Oh, I love you, Norma. I just couldn't believe when I saw you and Dave on here. I thought, oh, how wonderful. Dave keeps going in and out here. It's pretty cool. It's almost like his spirit.
It's the background.
The background. People tell me that on the meeting I have. They go, you disappear and then you come out of the sky.
Yeah.
I've watched enough Marvel movies to know exactly what's going on there.
Yeah.
So, Katie, I wanted to just tell you how much I enjoyed hearing you as well. And I come here, if I remember, on Thursdays, but I told Norma that you were going to be on tonight, so I guess it would be okay for women to be in this men's meeting. So, sure. Anyway, she's glad to got to hear you. Starting from page 60, we read all this stuff about the play actor, which is when it says made a decision, turn our will and life over to the care of God. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? And it says, well, first we're going to describe what it ain't. And we get a couple of pages of that, and we get to the bottom of 62 where it says this is the how and why of it. It's for me to quit playing God and God to become my director. And from that point on, all of the steps are a part of teaching me how to make that a reality of God becoming my director. It's training. It's learning to feel an inspiration and put it into words. Writing is a big part of that training. And I remember in a meeting one time I said something about, I felt like God told me this. And I think I said that again before I was through sharing. And I heard this guy across the table say, I wish God would talk to me. And I'm thinking, what did you miss? It's the how and why of the program.
That's right.
Amen. So anyway, thank you for carrying the message, Katie.
You bet, Dave. You and I could take down countries. You know what I mean?
So I'm just going to do a couple more. How about Steve Lamb?
Nice. Steve Lamb, alcoholic. It's good to be here. It's good to be sober. It's great to hear you, Katie, and it's good to see Charlie. And I love you talking about 10 and 11. And, you were talking about that evening review. I've done that evening review every night for over 24 years. Mm-hmm. And I would like to tell you that it's spiritual exercise. It's a spiritual practice. I actually think it might be a low-level form of OCD. That might be
it can turn into that.
Yeah, but the thing that's interesting about it is I find when I do it at night, pretty much all your fault. I review it in the morning, and I'm able to see my mistake, fault, and blame. And as you're well aware, in the original manuscript, that was done in the morning, not at night. So I do it both, and I find it very helpful. It's always great to hear you. Love you. Thanks.
Yeah, love you too, Steve.
Thanks. And how about Charlie Parker?
No.
Hi, Tim. That was funny. During the meeting, the next door neighbor came over and she'd heard a bump in the night and wanted me to walk through our house with her because she thought the boogeyman was in there. Katie, good job. I love hearing you talk about 10 and 11. Steve, it's funny you'd say that about doing the evening review in the morning. I do it a lot in the morning. And one time I was talking to Blind David. I said, in the original manuscript, it says, in the mornings we did that, and he goes, well, I think if we're going to say that the big book is divinely inspired, we're going to have to look at the idea that the changes were divinely inspired too. So it might be dangerous if we start picking this from the old, red manuscripts and this. I was like, I like it better the way I tell it. But
Steve, I'm sticking with you, Steve, on that. I do it in the morning too.
But it's funny if anybody's feeling like you're not doing it. I watch Katie every morning, and they are strict spiritual disciplines for her. And while I'm in there checking, cryptocurrency and whatever's going on the news and stuff. I mean, she says, I'm going to go do my morning disciplines. And the other day, I was thinking that I need to step up my evening review. And it took everything I had to go to Katie and say, would you help me spark up my evening review a little bit? I thought, you live with Katie Parker, for Pete's sake. Go ask her for help. And she's just been champing at the bit, waiting for me to ask for the instructions. But,
and it hasn't happened. And I told God, when is it going to happen?
But I love this meeting, and he got such a great crowd tonight. There's a lot of dear friends on here.
Yeah.
And I love all you guys. Thanks for calling on me, Tim. Tim, I'm especially fond of you.
Thanks, Charlie. And Katie, thank you so much. What a wonderful message. And, in the past week, I did the evening review once in the morning because I missed it. And the evening review, for me, I can't tell you the last time I wrote out an evening review. Now I'm going to take that into some prayerful consideration. I don't write it. Sometimes I read the questions and take a deep breath between each question. I read it out of the book. And oftentimes it's a chat with my wife, and she's sober longer than me. And we review our day, and it's pretty cool. And we corrective actions. Sometimes she'll say something that I couldn't see, and that kind of thing. So that's pretty cool. But it's amazing for me how fast I get away from the clear-cut directions that are written down. Mm-hmm. And I just miss stuff, and I just go my own way. And so thanks for the reminders. It's really powerful. I heard your talk, a few weeks ago when you were texting me about, what's the topic, and don't tell me whatever you want it to be or something. I'm like, I want to hear about step 10 again, and that you brought that tonight. And thank you so much for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Jack to wrap it up.
Katie, I love you.
I love you too, Jack.
And that was awesome. And I love how you can break down the discipline, and we're not good at it. And I love how you said that. And it says right in our text that God will discipline us. And I think it's through my eyes being open, my experience of it. And my experience of it is I want more. And I loved what you talked about. I'm like Tim. And a lot of other people that I've shared, I've not missed an evening review in a long time. But I also have not written it down ever. And I think I'll start writing some love letters.
Those are my favorite.
And I think that I'll take that into consideration and start doing that. So I love how you share your experience, and thank you so much for being here. And how important the discipline is, because I can't see the spiritual malady coming down around my eyes. I can't see it ever. Mm-hmm. I rely on the program of Alcoholics Anonymous to enlighten me and wake me up, because I don't know when I'm sleeping. And it's hanging out with people like you that keep me awake, and I love that. Thanks.
You bet. Call me, and I'll read a couple of my love letters to you. And Bill and I did that, and it rocketed Bill into a love letter writing that was just remarkable. When somebody really takes me up on that offer, I tell you, you're getting ready to be rocketed, because God loves to speak through the pen.
I will call you. And
do it.
We have a very nice way of closing. Katie, you are awesome. And unmute yourselves, and we do the God thank you prayer, which goes like this. God, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
All right, guys.
Amazing.
Good to see
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Love you guys.
Love
See you, everyone. So just so everybody knows, I did record this. I have never recorded one. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the recording, but if you would like a recording, email me or call me. I'll try and figure it out.
Hey, call Steve B. He'll direct you.